Welcome to RTV Global Network. I'm Marcus.
And Emily.
Today is August 14th, 2026. And right now, somewhere in the country, a teenager's entire future is essentially hinging on the integrity of the ceiling tape on a physics exam.
Right, which is just wild to think about.
It is. And meanwhile, thousands of miles away from here, you've got a multi-billion-dollar global sporting empire actively threatening to boycott its own World Cup.
Yeah, the stakes are just incredibly high everywhere you look today.
Exactly. So we are looking at a massive stack of sources today. It spans everything from local ground-level updates to these crazy high-stakes global geopolitical shifts. And the mission of this deep dive is to really just make sense of this chaotic news cycle for you.
Yeah, because we're not just going to, read the headlines to you. We're going to look under the hood to understand the actual mechanisms that are driving these events.
Right, because if you've been feeling overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information out there lately, you're definitely not alone. Our goal is to sift through all that noise, find the signal, and really connect the dots between things like sweeping justice reforms, subtle shifts in economic engines, and the just bizarre realities of the global stage today.
And as we lay out these seemingly disconnected pieces of information, you start to see a very distinct pattern emerge.
Yeah, a huge pattern.
Right. We are looking at systems, whether they're legal frameworks, infrastructural grids, or international alliances that are just under immense, unprecedented stress.
They're completely strained.
Exactly. They are trying to adapt to a rapidly changing reality. And what you are seeing in the news today is really just the friction between the rules written on paper and, well, actual human behavior in practice.
So let's start right at the ground level of that friction, literally on the streets. There's a new directive that just came down from the DG in charge of traffic here in Sri Lanka, and it essentially orders police officers to stop playing hide-and-seek with motorists.
Which is a fundamental shift in their whole operational philosophy.
It really is. The directive explicitly states that when a vehicle needs to be stopped for a traffic offense, the police officers have to carry out the interception openly, like professionally, and at a location that is entirely visible to other road users.
Right. No more ambushes.
Exactly. They are strictly forbidden from hiding in isolated locations or, ducking behind bushes to catch motorists off guard.
Which is huge because for decades, the element of surprise has been basically the primary tool in local traffic enforcement.
Yeah, that was the whole strategy.
Right. The prevailing theory was this sort of omnipresent deterrence. Like, if you believe an officer could be hiding behind literally any tree or billboard, the fear of that hidden enforcement is what compels you to obey the law continuously rather than just, when you see a neon yellow vest.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge that logic for a second. Because from a purely behavioral standpoint, if I'm driving, and I know the police are now legally required to be highly visible, doesn't that just mean I can speed or ignore the rules right up until the moment I spot an officer in the distance?
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Like, if the ultimate goal of the police is to catch people who are actually driving dangerously, why is visibility suddenly the absolute top priority? It seems like you'd catch fewer offenders this way, right?
Yeah, well, you are looking at it purely as a mechanism for punishment.
Right.
Which is exactly how it has been viewed for a long time. But modern policing, and really what this new directive is trying to implement, prioritizes public trust and proactive safety over just retroactive punishment.
Okay, so stopping the accident before it happens.
Exactly. Think about the psychological dynamic of a hidden officer. When an officer leaps out from behind a bush to issue a ticket, it doesn't feel like a public safety measure to the citizen.
No, it feels like a trap.
Right. It feels like an ambush. It feels like the state is operating this predatory revenue generation scheme. And that fractures the social contract between law enforcement and the public.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So it breeds resentment rather than respect.
Precisely. By mandating that interceptions happen openly, authorities are really attempting to rebuild that trust. The logic is that a visible police presence physically slows down the flow of traffic.
Yeah, everyone hits the brakes when they see a cop.
Exactly. It prevents the accident before it happens, whereas a hidden officer only addresses the issue after the dangerous behavior has already occurred.
So it's really about changing the perception of the police from an adversary to a visible pillar of order. But, while the traffic divisions are stepping out of the shadows, other branches of law enforcement are plunging deep into the underground economy right now.
And the scale of what they are finding is staggering.
It is unbelievable. We are looking at massive, highly complex crackdowns. Just today, a 53-year-old woman in Colombo was arrested by the Illegal Assets Investigation Division.
Right.
She is allegedly linked to properties and assets worth 57 million rupees, and it is entirely tied to drug operations.
See, that specific detail, a 53-year-old woman controlling 57 million rupees, that completely upends the traditional cinematic stereotype of what a drug kingpin looks like.
Yeah, she doesn't fit the cartel boss profile at all.
Not at all.
Mhm.
And it illustrates the sheer financial mechanics of modern illicit economies. 57 million rupees doesn't just sit in a duffel bag under a bed.
No, it has to go somewhere.
Exactly. It gets integrated. It buys real estate. It funds legitimate storefronts. It infiltrates the banking system. It shows that these syndicates are not operating on the ragged fringes of society anymore. They are deeply woven into the urban economic fabric.
And it goes way beyond narcotics, too. We are seeing a massive explosion in illegal gambling right now,
Huh.
specifically an operation known locally as Kotu Kapima.
Right, which is growing incredibly fast.
Right. Yeah, for you listening, if you are unfamiliar with the shadow economy, this isn't just a casual card game in a back alley. It is a highly structured, rapidly expanding illegal betting ring. And the sources today note that individual bets are now soaring past 100,000 rupees.
Which is astronomical.
It's life-altering money for the average citizen to be dropping on an illicit wager.
Well, when you see an illegal gambling syndicate ballooning at that rate, with stakes climbing into the hundreds of thousands, you are not just looking at a crime story.
What are we looking at then?
You're looking at an economic barometer. High-stakes illegal gambling often surges when there is acute systemic economic stress in a country.
Oh, so it's a symptom of a larger problem.
Exactly. When people feel completely squeezed out of upward mobility in the legitimate economy, like when their wages just don't match inflation, they turn to the shadow economy out of pure desperation.
So they're chasing miracle.
Right. They take these massive irrational risks hoping for a miraculous payout to clear their debts. And it just becomes a vicious cycle of poverty and exploitation that law enforcement is left to try and clean up.
Which brings a whole new layer of complexity to how the police actually operate today.
Mm.
Because they aren't just dealing with local bookies or, neighborhood drug rings anymore. The EK system is completely transnational now.
It really is.
Look at the updates today. The suspects from that horrific Wadala birthday party shooting have just been deported from India back to Sri Lanka to face justice.
Right. They fled across the ocean immediately.
Yeah. And authorities are also having to categorically reject claims that a joint operation in Malaysia to arrest a notorious underworld figure, Kanjipani, was a failure. Plus, and perhaps most staggeringly, Sri Lanka is currently seeking Interpol red notices for 93 different suspects hiding abroad. 93.
That number is wild. And it is probably worth clarifying exactly how that mechanism works for you listening. An Interpol Red Notice is not an international arrest warrant, which is how it's often misunderstood in movies.
Right, they aren't sending global SWAT teams.
No, not at all. It is a formal, global request to law enforcement agencies worldwide to locate and provisionally arrest a person pending extradition. So the fact that Sri Lanka requires 93 of these notices highlights how borders have become fundamentally irrelevant to organized crime.
They just don't care about jurisdictions.
Exactly. Criminal networks are leveraging globalization, international flight paths, and jurisdictional loopholes just as efficiently as multinational corporations do. An exit strategy to a foreign safe haven is now basically standard operating procedure for major local syndicates.
But the globalization of crime isn't just a one-way street, right? I mean, we aren't just exporting fugitives. We are actively importing incredibly sophisticated criminal operations.
The cybercrime figures are terrifying.
They really are. The statistics released today show that over 1,000 foreign nationals have been arrested in cybercrime and financial fraud raids inside Sri Lanka just this year. More than 1,000 individuals.
That number forces us to look at the logistical nightmare of modern law enforcement. I mean, when you raid a compound and arrest over 1,000 foreign cybercriminals, you are dealing with international syndicates who actively analyzed Sri Lanka and decided, hey, its digital infrastructure or maybe its regulatory enforcement is vulnerable enough to set up a massive base of operations here.
It's the sheer physical logistics that blow my mind, honestly.
Yeah.
You arrest 1,000 people who don't speak the local language. Where do you even put them?
That is exactly the problem. You have to securely house them, you have to feed them, you have to provide legal translation services for dozens of different dialects.
Oh man, the translation alone would be a nightmare.
It is. And then you have to navigate complex international extradition treaties and liaise with multiple foreign embassies simultaneously. It is an administrative burden that can literally paralyze a justice system.
Which perfectly illustrates the massive bottleneck we're seeing right now. It is one thing for the police to aggressively raid these cyber compounds and arrest drug financiers. It is a completely different mechanism to actually process them through the courts.
The pipeline is full, but the drain is clogged.
Exactly. The pipeline of arrest is wide open, but the judicial drain is completely clogged.
Yeah.
And we are seeing the physical manifestation of this pressure in places like the Willicata Magazine prison.
Right. The recent clash.
Yeah, there was a recent violent clash there. And today we have a new, highly detailed account from an ex-inmate who actually witnessed it. When you pack an exponentially growing number of people into a confined, deteriorating space, and their court dates are delayed by months or even years, explosive tension is just a biological and sociological inevitability.
It is the absolute definition of a systemic bottleneck, and the highest levels of government are acutely aware of it. President Anura Kumara Dissanayake issued a statement today explicitly acknowledging that system-wide changes are required to end these agonizing delays in justice.
But the gridlock is just so pervasive. I mean, to give you a concrete example of how deep this goes, routine judicial appointments. The very mechanism needed to put more judges on the bench to hear these cases are currently effectively on hold.
Wait, they can't even appoint new judges?
No. They are stalled due to the ongoing legal complexities surrounding the Easter attacks case. The system literally cannot even appoint the people it needs to unblock itself.
Wow.
And right in the middle of this paralyzing gridlock, the entire legal fraternity has erupted over the 22A constitutional amendment.
This is a huge story today.
It is. For you listening, to break down the mechanics of this neutrally, the 22A amendment proposes changing the mandatory retirement age of superior court judges.
Yeah.
And the backlash has been instantaneous.
Right, the BSL is getting involved.
Oh, heavily. The Bar Association of Sri Lanka is actively demanding a meeting with the president. They're vowing to use every single legal avenue to contest this amendment.
Yep.
And at the same time, multiple civil society organizations have formed a unified platform to fight it.
See, to a casual observer, a debate over a retirement age sounds like, mundane HR policy. Like, who cares what age they retire?
Yeah, it sounds like paperwork.
Exactly. But in constitutional law, this is the absolute epicenter of democratic friction.
How so?
Because the tenure and the retirement age of superior court judges are the structural pillars that guarantee the independence of the judiciary. Those opposing the 22A amendment argue that allowing the executive or legislative branches to alter these terms creates a mechanism to selectively remove or retain judges.
So it could influence who sits on the bench.
Right, thereby influencing the composition and the rulings of the highest courts. But conversely, proponents of the amendment argue that such changes are necessary modernizations to clear the very judicial backlog we just discussed.
It's a catch-22.
Basically, what you are witnessing is the fundamental principle of the separation of powers being actively wrestled over in real time.
And the political stakes are absolute. I mean, facing down the combined opposition of the legal establishment and civil society. President Dissanayake made a very definitive declaration today.
He didn't back down.
Not at all. He stated that meaningful political and constitutional change requires taking immense risks, and he added that he is, quote, ready to risk office for change.
Wow. When a sitting leader publicly wagers their own tenure on a specific set of reforms, it drastically changes the political calculus.
It draws a massive line in the sand.
It does. It signals that the administration views these judicial changes not just as minor policy tweaks, but as the foundational surgery required to unblock the entire state apparatus.
Oh.
We have moved entirely past the phase of diplomatic negotiation and entered a period of extreme, high-stakes political maneuvering.
So we have a justice system choking on its own backlog, police modernizing their street tactics while battling global cyber syndicates, and a constitutional showdown brewing over the Supreme Courts.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But how is the physical reality of the country functioning underneath all this political drama? This is where we really need to look at the economic engine and the state of the infrastructure. Because at the end of the day, political will doesn't keep the lights on.
No, it doesn't. And here we find a fascinating, almost jarring duality in today's sources. because there is a very deliberate narrative of macroeconomic optimism being broadcast right now.
There certainly is. I mean, today marks the official rollout of 2.5 billion rupees worth of revenue-generating development projects across the country. That is a massive, tangible injection of capital.
A huge number.
Yeah. Furthermore, the president is aggressively pushing a narrative that science, research, and technology must become the primary drivers of economic growth, pivoting away from historical reliance on traditional, vulnerable sectors.
And if you look strictly at the macro indicators, there is data to actually validate that optimism. The tourism engine is roaring back. Over 1.3 million international visitors have crossed the border so far in 2026.
Which brings in so much foreign currency.
Exactly. That represents a vital stream of hard foreign currency flowing directly into local hospitality, transit, and retail. And adding to that confidence, the Institute of International Finance, the IIF, released a report showing Sri Lanka is rapidly climbing the global rankings for investor relations and debt transparency.
The corporate sector is clearly reading those exact same signals too, because we're seeing aggressive market moves today. DFCC Bank, in partnership with Sri Lankan Airlines, just launched a new Visa Platinum credit card,
Right.
which is a strong bet that consumer discretionary spending and travel are rebounding. And on a heavy industry scale, Dongfeng, the massive global trucking manufacturer, has officially launched operations in Sri Lanka in partnership with Euromotors.
That's a major logistical investment.
It is. You do not bring a global logistics and trucking brand into a new territory unless your internal data suggests that goods are going to be moving and infrastructure is going to be expanding rapidly.
But, and this is where we have to reconcile the spreadsheet with the actual street, if we connect this macroeconomic optimism to the physical realities of the country today, we hit a wall of severe infrastructural debt that threatens to stall that entire engine.
Yeah, the reality check here is incredibly harsh. Let's talk about the most fundamental resource imaginable, water.
Right?
The Department of Irrigation announced today that reservoir water capacities have plummeted to a critical 37%. The districts of Ampara, Batticaloa, and Trincomalee are facing the brunt of this.
That is dangerously low.
When a nation's reservoirs drop to 37%, it triggers a devastating domino effect. It means the agricultural sector faces immediate drought, which threatens food security and drives up prices.
There's energy, too.
Exactly. It means hydropower generation, which is a massive chunk of the energy grid, is compromised, raising the specter of power rationing, and it means just basic daily sanitation and survival for millions of people becomes a grueling challenge. Add to that, just today, a major mechanical breakdown caused severe cascading delays across the entire main line of the railway network.
See, these are not just daily annoyances. These are systemic failures of legacy infrastructure. You simply cannot sustain a booming, science-driven 2.5 billion rupee economic revival if the workforce cannot physically get to their jobs because the trains are broken.
Yeah, the workers are literally stuck on the platform.
Exactly. And the agricultural backbone is withering due to catastrophic water management. The shiny new corporate investments are basically being built on a crumbling foundation.
Which brings us to the controversy surrounding how we actually fix that foundation.
Yeah.
Right now, there is intense, highly critical scrutiny directed at the Road Development Authority, the RDA.
Regarding the tenders, yeah.
The issue revolves around the procurement and tender process for two massive projects.
Yeah.
The CEP4, which is the fourth phase of the Central Expressway project, and the Ruampura Expressway. The criticism isn't merely about the astronomical costs of these projects. The core debate is over the mechanism of competitive bidding itself. Like whether the companies winning these billion rupee tenders actually possess the physical, financial, and engineering capacity to pour the concrete, or if they are simply experts at navigating the bureaucratic paperwork to submit the lowest bid.
Which exposes a massive flaw in how governments procure infrastructure globally. I mean, a competitive tender process is theoretically designed to protect the taxpayer, right? By forcing companies to offer the lowest possible price.
Right. You want the best deal.
But if the procurement mechanism only evaluates the price tag and fails to rigorously audit the contractor's actual heavy machinery inventory, their cash flow, and their engineering track record, well, the system fails.
They might not even own the bulldozers.
Exactly. Awarding a mega project to the lowest bidder who lacks the capacity to build it results in half-finished bridges, decade-long delays, and endless budget overruns. In the end, the quote-unquote cheap bid becomes an unimaginably expensive generational failure.
I was trying to visualize this friction earlier, and it feels like a concept we can call Infrastructure debt.
I like that term.
It's like we were trying to install a state-of-the-art gigabit fiber optic network into a house, but we haven't paid the basic maintenance debt on the roof, which is currently caving in from the rain.
That is a perfect analogy.
We have these sweeping visions of global trucking logistics and science-driven economies, but the interest payments on our neglected legacy systems, the 37% reservoirs, the broken trains, the compromised procurement systems, they are eating up all the capital. How does a nation actually navigate that?
It navigates it by accepting that physical and economic infrastructure are deeply holistically intertwined. The fiber optic cable is absolutely useless if the server room floods from the leaky roof.
Right.
Developing nations are constantly forced into this impossible balancing act. They have to aggressively maintain 20th century legacy systems just to keep society functioning today, while simultaneously scraping together the capital to invest in the 21st century infrastructure required for tomorrow.
It's like building an airplane while flying it.
Exactly. When the political focus shifts entirely to the shiny new expressways while the reservoirs run dry, you get the exact grinding contradictions we are reading about today.
That concept, the transition from legacy systems to the demands of the future, is honestly the perfect bridge to our next major theme.
Yeah.
Because infrastructure isn't just asphalt and water management. The most critical infrastructure of any nation is its human capital.
Absolutely.
Let's examine society, public safety, and the massive seismic shift currently being proposed in the education sector.
If we view education as the ultimate long-term infrastructure, today's sources provide a really stark look at a visionary long-term goal colliding violently with an immediate frantic reality.
The vision is coming from Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasriya. She's advocating for a complete structural overhaul to break Sri Lanka's deeply entrenched, intensely exam-centered education culture.
Which is a massive undertaking.
It's huge. She is pushing to modernize how human potential is assessed, trying to dismantle a system where a single, high-stakes, standardized test essentially dictates the entire socioeconomic trajectory of a child's life.
And it is a critical paradigm shift, particularly if the president wants that science-driven economy we talked about earlier. The current pedagogical model, which culminates in the advanced level, or AL exams, creates a hyper-competitive, almost Darwinian environment.
Right, because there just aren't enough seats in the universities.
Exactly. Because spots in state universities are so severely limited, the exam doesn't just test knowledge, it acts as a ruthless gatekeeper. This forces the entire educational ecosystem to prioritize rote memorization, endless private tutoring, and extreme psychological pressure over actual critical thinking, creativity, or technical skill acquisition.
It's just a memory test under duress.
Exactly. The Prime Minister is arguing that this legacy system cannot produce the adaptable, innovative workforce required for the future.
But if you want to understand exactly how deeply that legacy system is wired into the national psyche, just look at the absolute panic that erupted today. The Ministry of Education had to launch an immediate probe because of a mix-up at the Ambulantoda AL Exam Center.
Oh, the physics paper.
Yes. 6 packets containing tomorrow's physics paper were accidentally unsealed ahead of time. The national uproar was so immediate and so intense that the exam's chief himself had to issue a public statement, categorically denying that the physical papers were actually leaked or seen by students.
The sociology of that panic is fascinating, honestly. Why does the state of the adhesive tape on a manila envelope containing a physics test paralyze an entire nation?
Because that envelope contains the golden ticket. It is the only way up for most of these kids.
Exactly. The sheer ferocity of the public reaction proves the Prime Minister's thesis perfectly. When an entire society's upward economic mobility, the hopes of parents, and the financial future of a family are entirely bottlenecked through a few sheets of paper on one specific morning, well, the physical integrity of that paper becomes a matter of supreme national security.
It really does.
Think about the hidden costs here. The mental and physiological toll this takes on 17 and 18-year-old students is staggering. They are not just taking a test, they are bearing the weight of generational economic anxiety.
That is so heavy for a teenager.
It is. So when the Prime Minister talks about breaking that culture, it isn't just about updating a syllabus. It is a massive psychological and sociological intervention for millions of people.
And when we look at the psychology and safety of the society at large, there are other deeply troubling indicators flashing today. We have a truly heartbreaking, devastating story out of Wadagama.
Yeah, this was tough to read.
A 4-year-old girl was discovered injured and completely abandoned after a woman brought her to the area in a three-wheeler and simply left her there.
It is a profound, localized tragedy, and, we must treat the human element with immense care. But from a systemic perspective, incidents of child abandonment rarely happen in a vacuum.
Right, there's always a lead up.
Always. They are almost always the most tragic, visible symptoms of severe, unseen ruptures in the social safety net. They point to underlying crises that the statistics miss. Extreme economic desperation, lack of support for single parents, or acute, unaddressed mental health emergencies. It is what happens when every protective system fails a vulnerable person simultaneously.
We are also seeing the unintended fatal consequences of economic shifts playing out on the roads. Today's data highlights the deadly reality of the motorcycle boom.
The numbers on this are staggering.
They are. There are now 5.2 million motorcycles on Sri Lankan roads. This surge was entirely driven by macroeconomic necessity. As cars became prohibitively expensive and fuel prices fluctuated, millions turned to two-wheelers as the only viable mechanism for mobility and commerce.
Right, you have to get to work somehow.
Exactly. But the physical road infrastructure, the traffic laws, and the driver education systems were never designed to safely integrate 5.2 million exposed riders mixing with heavy commercial trucking and chaotic urban traffic.
It perfectly illustrates how a grassroots economic solution to one problem instantly generates a massive public health crisis in another sector. The necessity of cheap transport has outpaced the safety capacity of the infrastructure.
And speaking of public health, it remains a persistent threat. The live tracker for dengue fever is highly active today, warning the public that cases continue to surge, adding another layer of strain to the medical infrastructure.
It's just constant pressure on the hospitals.
It really is. We are managing multiple overlapping societal crises. And amidst all this urgency, the broken trains, the exam panics, the safety hazards, the bureaucratic machinery of the state just grinds on at a glacial pace.
Oh, the Elections Committee.
Yes. Yeah. We see today that Election Commission officials have been summoned yet again before a special committee to discuss the conduct of the provincial council elections.
The repeated summoning of the Election Commission is a masterclass in political paralysis. I mean, while the central executive branch is pushing sweeping grand visions for economic overhaul and constitutional reform, the actual mechanisms for localized provincial democracy remain trapped in an endless loop of committee hearings and procedural delays.
It's like they're having meetings about having meetings.
Exactly. It creates a massive disconnect between the speed of the government's ambitions and the reality of local governance.
All right, let's zoom out. We have navigated the local streets, the choked courtrooms, the depleted reservoirs, and the anxious classrooms of Sri Lanka. Now, we need to take a massive step back and look at the macro trends, the military fatigue, and the technological revolutions happening on the global stage.
Because in a hyper-connected world, none of the local friction we just discussed happens in a vacuum.
No, everything influences everything else.
Right. The global systems are exhibiting their own signs of extreme, almost dangerous stress. The margin for error everywhere is shrinking.
Let's look at the sheer velocity of global mobility first. On the commercial front, we are witnessing an unprecedented boom. Data released today confirms that South Korea's Incheon airport has officially overtaken all others to become the world's busiest airport for global traffic.
The logistical orchestration required to move that volume of humanity safely through a single hub is an engineering marvel. It really is. It's incredible. But then, you contrast that triumph of logistics with the terrifying human stress within the aviation industry itself. Today, Air India announced an immediate, drastic policy. They are subjecting all of their pilots to testing for banned substances.
That juxtaposition is incredibly jarring. You have the ultimate symbol of seamless global connection at Incheon, contrasted with a major national flag carrier taking the drastic, highly public step of blanket drug testing its entire flight crew roster.
Which is not a standard move.
No, this isn't a routine health check. It suggests an acute, systemic concern about the severe mental and physical toll the aviation industry is inflicting on the human beings actually operating the machinery. When schedules become grueling, when pressure mounts and pilots seek chemical assistance just to stay awake or manage stress, well, human fallibility becomes a terrifying variable at 35,000 feet. And if you want to examine what happens when you push human endurance to the absolute breaking point, look at the military logistics updates today. The U.S. military is raising serious public alarms regarding the living conditions aboard an aircraft carrier that has been deployed at sea for more than 250 days.
250 days.
Think about the mechanics of that. Over 8 months, trapped in a floating nuclear-powered metal box, navigating one of the most high-tension geopolitical zones on the planet.
It is an extreme stress test of both metallurgy and psychology. I mean, a standard carrier deployment is traditionally calibrated for around 6 months. When you push past 250 days, the physical systems of the ship, the desalination plants, the catapults, the rust mitigation, they all begin to degrade.
Right, the hardware breaks down.
But far more critically, the psychological readiness, the discipline, and the morale of the thousands of sailors on board begin to fracture. Sleep deprivation compounds, isolation takes its toll, and reaction times slow down. It is a very tangible, dangerous indicator of how deeply overextended global military resources are right now.
And the tragic, fatal consequences of military operations are also starkly present in the news today. An AH-64 Apache attack helicopter crashed in Texas, resulting in the deaths of 2 U.S. Army pilots and igniting a massive, uncontrolled wildfire.
Oh, that's terrible.
It is. The risks of operating complex military hardware are constant. We also received a deeply chilling revelation today regarding the razor-thin margins of global political security.
The Trump plane incident.
Yes. It was disclosed that former U.S. President Donald Trump had to secretly switch aircraft while in Turkey due to a credible, highly specific security threat.
When you synthesize these global data points, the commercially exhausted pilots resorting to banned substances, the fatigued sailors trapped on a carrier, the downed Apache, the emergency mid-air plane switch for a global political figure, it taints a vivid picture of a world operating on a knife edge.
The tension is palpable.
It is. The systems facilitating global transit, whether civilian, military, or diplomatic, are stretched so taut that the margin for human or mechanical error has effectively shrunk to zero.
Now, amid all of this geopolitical and military tension, the global economy is staring down the barrel of a technological revolution that could rewrite the rules of wealth entirely.
Enter AI.
Exactly. The World Bank released a comprehensive report today stating that artificial intelligence could radically, fundamentally transform developing economies in just 10 years.
A 10-year horizon for complete structural transformation. That is moving at light speed in economic terms.
It really is.
It is undoubtedly the defining economic and developmental challenge of the next decade. AI is not simply a new software tool to make spreadsheets faster. It is a fundamental restructuring of how cognitive labor is performed and how economic value is generated.
But this brings me right back to the friction we discussed earlier regarding infrastructure debt. Because if AI is going to revolutionize developing economies in a mere decade, what is the actual strategic move for a country like ours?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. Do we focus our limited capital on fixing the physical baseline first, like trying to get the reservoirs up from 37%, fixing the broken railway lines, paving the roads? Or do we just accept that the physical world is flawed and attempt to leapfrog straight into digital AI integration?
That is the multi-trillion-dollar developmental paradox, actually. The concept of leapfrogging became very popular with the advent of mobile phones.
Oh, right, skipping landlines.
Exactly. Developing nations realized they didn't need to spend decades laying copper landline wires to every village. They skipped that entire phase and went straight to building cellular towers, and it worked brilliantly.
So why not do that with AI?
Because AI is fundamentally different from a cell signal. AI cannot exist in the ether. It requires immense constant streams of electricity. It requires robust temperature-controlled data centers, and it requires a highly educated, digitally literate workforce.
Oh, right, you have to power the servers.
Exactly. You simply cannot run a 21st century AI-driven economy if your servers shut down because the reservoirs are too empty to run the hydropower turbines. The digital infrastructure is entirely captive to the physical infrastructure.
So you can't just skip the hard part.
No, the answer isn't choosing one over the other. It requires an agonizingly difficult simultaneous balancing act of upgrading the physical baseline while laying the digital framework, all with severely limited resources.
Which requires a level of visionary, almost ruthless economic leadership, which actually makes the international news of Zhu Rongji's death at age 97 particularly poignant today.
Yes, the former Chinese premier.
Right. He was widely known as the economic czar, basically the architect who navigated the labyrinth of structural transitions to help turn China into the industrial and economic powerhouse it is today.
Zhu Rongji's legacy is a masterclass in the immense political will required for structural transformation. He took a massive, inefficient, state-planned economy and violently dragged it into the globalized market.
And people pushed back, I assume.
Oh, heavily. He often made deeply unpopular, ruthless decisions regarding state-owned enterprises to achieve that efficiency. His life is a historical reminder that true economic transformation requires far more than just adopting new technology. It requires the courage to tear down legacy institutional structures.
And we are seeing fascinating institutional restructuring happening on the African continent today as well. The Thabo Mbeki Foundation and the WDB Trust have officially united to form a powerful new Africa-focused institution, the TZMMF.
Right, which is a major consolidation.
Yeah, it represents a massive consolidation of continental policy research and women-led community developmental power.
It is a vital indicator of a shifting geopolitical axis, really,
Yeah.
as the traditional powers of the global north become increasingly consumed by their own internal crises and military overextensions, like we just talked about with the aircraft carriers. Institutions in the global south are realizing they must consolidate their own intellectual, financial, and developmental resources.
They're building their own safety nets.
Exactly. It is a move toward regional self-reliance, designing solutions tailored to the specific realities of the continent rather than waiting for external aid frameworks.
But while we talk about the macro movements of globalization, we must acknowledge its dark, tragic realities for the individuals caught in its currents. We are following a terrible story out of Japan today, where an 18-year-old Sri Lankan national has been arrested in connection with the fatal stabbing of a fellow Sri Lankan student.
It's an incredibly sad situation.
It is a localized, deeply personal tragedy, but it serves as a stark reminder of the immense pressures faced by the diaspora community. Young people leave their homes, traveling thousands of miles in search of economic opportunity or education, but they carry the heavy burdens of expectation, isolation, and conflict with them.
It speaks to the intense, often invisible psychological toll of migration, the pressure to assimilate, the struggle for economic survival in a foreign culture, and the isolation from traditional support networks. All of that can create environments where interpersonal conflicts escalate into unimaginable tragedies.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking. Before we transition away from the global section, though, there are two fascinating, slightly lighter stories that perfectly capture the quirks of science and human culture today.
I love these ones.
First, a major neurological study was published today revealing that dogs possess the cognitive ability to distinguish between different emotions in a human face. They can literally read our moods from our micro-expressions.
From an evolutionary standpoint, this is just incredible.
I mean, dog owners already knew this, right?
Oh, culturally, anyone with a dog has intuitively known they are empathetic. But to have rigorous scientific proof that a completely different species has evolved the specific neurological architecture to read human facial tension and joy, it demonstrates how profoundly intertwined our two species' evolutionary paths have been over thousands of years.
It's amazing. And on the purely cultural side, for the pop culture fans, the ultimate symbols of fictional power are going up for grabs today. The original prop dragon eggs used in the hit television series Game of Thrones are heading to a major auction. I can only imagine the astronomical sums those are going to command.
It is actually a perfect, bizarre emblem of modern subjective economics. Think about it. You have an object, a prop made of resin and paint, that possesses absolutely zero intrinsic utility or material value.
It doesn't do anything.
Exactly. Yet it will likely exchange hands for millions of dollars, purely because of the immense shared cultural narrative and the collective emotional resonance attached to it. It proves that value is often entirely a construct of human storytelling.
People are paying for the story, not the resin.
Exactly.
All right, we are coming into the home stretch here. We turn now to the sports roundup. Because sports are never just games, are they?
Never.
They are the purest distillation of national narratives. They act as proxies for geopolitical diplomacy, and they showcase the absolute limits of human endurance. Let's start with cricket.
The undeniable pulse of the nation.
Always. The LPL 2026 has reached its climax, and the Galley Gallants have been officially crowned the Lanka Premier League champions.
Which was a massive win.
It was a grueling, thrilling tournament. We have to highlight the explosive performance of McDermott, whose sheer power hitting dragged the Colombo Caps into Qualifier 2 earlier in the week, and Mishara, whose tactical heroics anchored the Jaffna Kings through the immense pressure of the playoffs.
The LPL has really evolved far beyond mere entertainment at this point.
You think so?
Definitely. From a developmental perspective, it has become the crucial high-pressure proving ground for the national pipeline. It forces young domestic talent to share locker rooms with seasoned international veterans.
That exposure must be huge for them.
It is, and more importantly, it forces them to execute their skills in front of massive crowds under the intense, ruthless pressure of franchise expectations. It hardens them for the international stage.
And speaking of the international stage, the psychological warfare has officially commenced ahead of the upcoming test series.
Gavaskar's comments.
Yeah, former Indian captain, the legendary Sunil Gavaskar, has publicly issued a stark warning to the Indian national team. He explicitly stated that this upcoming series will not be easy, emphasizing that Sri Lanka is a profoundly formidable force on their home turf.
See, Gavaskar is a master tactician both on the field and in the press. He knows exactly the narrative he is constructing here.
What's his angle?
He is simultaneously managing the expectations of the notoriously demanding Indian fan base, while accurately acknowledging the unique biomechanics of touring Sri Lanka. The specific composition of Sri Lankan pitches, combined with the generational pedigree of local spin bowling, creates a highly specialized ecosystem.
It's notoriously hard to bat there.
Right. It is an environment that has historically dismantled some of the most arrogant and highly rated batting lineups in the world. So he is setting the stage for a deeply tactical, grinding series.
And the Sri Lanka women's team has already delivered a massive tactical statement of their own. They decisively dismantled Pakistan by 6 wickets in the opening match of their T20I series.
That was a brilliant performance.
It was a commanding victory that sets a dominant tone for the rest of the tour. Moving from the tactical battles of the pitch to the explosive power of track and field, the sheer ambition surging through Sri Lankan athletics right now is awe-inspiring.
Rumesh Tharanga's announcement.
Yes, world no one Rumesh Tharanga has publicly thrown down a massive new challenge. He stated today that his ultimate sight is locked on securing an Olympic gold for Sri Lanka in the men's javelin.
Uttering that specific ambition out loud changes an athlete's entire psychological landscape.
Yeah, you can't take that back once you say it.
Exactly. Reaching the status of world #1 requires near-perfect physical mechanics and relentless training. But targeting an Olympic gold, which is the absolute pinnacle of human athletic achievement, requires an almost unbreakable mental fortitude.
He's inviting the pressure.
Yes. By stating it publicly, he is deliberately placing the immense weight of national expectation squarely onto his own shoulders, using it as fuel.
And he is not alone in chasing that ultimate glory. Balitha Bandara, Sri Lanka's celebrated silver champion, has declared that he has one final, monumental goal left to conquer before he rests. The internal drive these athletes possess is staggering.
It really is.
But, inevitably, the blinding light of elite athletics also casts deep shadows. Today, the sporting world was rocked by the news that the U.S. 1,500-meter champion has been officially banned for doping.
It exposes the eternal, tragic flaw of professional sports. When the margin between eternal glory and complete obscurity is measured in literal fractions of a second, well, the temptation to cheat the biological limits of the human body becomes immense.
It's overwhelming, yeah.
Exactly. It completely shatters the integrity of the ambition and the discipline we were just praising.
Finally, we must turn to the boardroom, to the high-stakes politics of sports administration, specifically in football. On a regional level, there is a significant diplomatic victory today.
Jazwar Umar.
Right. FFSL President Jazwar Umar has just been unanimously elected as the Vice President of SAFF, the South Asian Football Federation.
Which is a big deal, because in the world of sports, administration dictates reality. This election provides Sri Lanka with a much stronger, leveraged voice in regional football development, the allocation of funding, and the scheduling of tournaments. The power wielded in the boardroom directly shapes the opportunities available to the athletes out on the grass.
But the regional administration looks like child's play compared to the absolute earthquake happening on the global stage today. UEFA, the governing body representing European football's 55 member associations, has officially voted to boycott future World Cups if FIFA's new expansion plans are approved. Let that sink in. The European nations are threatening a total boycott of the World Cup.
This is a monumental, unprecedented clash of sporting titans. You really have to understand the financial mechanics at play here to grasp the severity of this.
It's all about the money, isn't it?
Always. UEFA represents the wealthiest, most commercially powerful clubs and national teams on the planet. They hold the premium product. FIFA, on the other hand, is the global governing body, whose entire financial empire relies on the quadrennial spectacle of the World Cup.
Right. They need Europe to show up.
Exactly. So when UEFA threatens a boycott, They are not just having a disagreement over rules, they are threatening to detonate the financial viability and the cultural legitimacy of FIFA's flagship event. It is a stark, brutal reminder that modern global sports are, at their core, massive, multi-billion-dollar political economies.
Wow. Okay, let's take a collective breath. The scope of what we have navigated today is immense.
We really covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started on the local streets, analyzing the philosophical shift toward transparent, visible traffic policing, and uncovering the staggering scale of the shadow economy, from 57 million rupees in drug assets to the ballooning stakes of illegal gambling rings.
And the cybercrime waves.
All right, we examined the logistical nightmare of processing thousands of transnational cybercriminals, while the justice system itself is paralyzed by bottlenecks, leading to explosive prison tensions and a fierce, high-stakes constitutional battle over the retirement age of judges.
A system totally under siege.
Exactly. Then we looked at the physical realities of the nation, the macroeconomic optimism of billion-rupee development projects, and surging tourism, slamming headfirst into the crushing reality of infrastructure debt. 37% reservoir capacities, broken transit lines, and deep systemic questions about how we procure and build our expressways.
The physical versus the digital future.
Yeah. We explored the profound societal shifts, the visionary push to dismantle a grueling, exam-centric education culture, contrasted immediately with the national paralysis over the ceiling tape on a single physics paper. We noted the lethal safety crises stemming from 5.2 million motorcycles and ongoing public health threats.
It's a lot of localized stress.
It is. And that we zoomed out to the global velocity. We witnessed the extreme stress in aviation with pilot-facing blanket drug tests and the psychological exhaustion of military crews trapped at sea for 250 days.
The margins are shrinking globally.
Yeah. We grappled with the World Bank's daunting 10-year countdown for an AI revolution, the passing of historical economic titans like Zhu Rongji, and the tragic psychological toll on the diaspora. Finally, we wrapped up with the soaring, immense ambitions of our athletes and the multi-billion-dollar political warfare threatening to tear global football apart.
It is a phenomenal amount of information to process in one sitting.
It really is.
But when you look closely at all of these seemingly disparate events, the undeniable connecting mechanism is how systems, whether they are legal frameworks, infrastructural grids, military logistics, or the human body itself, react to sustained, overwhelming pressure. We're watching a global society frantically attempting to rewrite its foundational operating systems while the machine is still running at maximum capacity.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today. We discussed that fascinating scientific study proving that our dogs possess the evolutionary architecture to look at our faces and instantly, intuitively, read our emotions. They can distinguish our stress, our anxiety, and our joy in a fraction of a second.
That's amazing empathy.
It is. Yet when you look at the sheer weight of the structural bottlenecks we unpacked today, from the immense psychological toll of an exam culture that terrorizes 18-year-olds, to the economic desperation driving citizens into the shadow economy, to the quiet frustration of delayed justice and neglected infrastructure, it poses a profound question.
What's that?
If our pets can read the distress of a human being instantaneously, why does it take our massive, complex human institutions years or even decades to recognize and adapt to those exact same human emotions? Why are the systems we built so blind to the stress they are causing the people they are meant to serve?
That is a very powerful question.
It is something to think about as you navigate the friction of the systems in your own life this week. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. On behalf of RTV Global Network, keep questioning the world around you, keep looking for the mechanisms behind the headlines, and we will catch you next time.